Good afternoon and welcome to today's webinar on the new Engage interface. Spend a little bit of time, it's going to be quite a quick webinar this afternoon, so really just going to spend 10-15 minutes taking you through the new interface. If you're already using the old interface, the old Engage, don't worry, the interface will make it a lot easier to set up your campaigns and your A/B tests, but what's going on behind the scenes and how this is instrumented in your game actually doesn't change at all. It remains exactly the same. We've really just made a pile of interface improvements that will hopefully make your life a lot easier. So what I will do today, as I demonstrate this, I'll be jumping between two different game accounts, two of my different demo game accounts, one of which has been using the old Engage system, so I can show you how it compares to the old one, and one of them that's completely brand new and is just using the new Engage interface. What we've actually done, depending whether you're just putting a game on or whether you have legacy games in the system, if you just put brand new games on now, they will get the new interface by default. If you have an existing game in there that has been using the old Engage interface, that old interface will still be visible, but we can give you both the old and the new interfaces. And there will come a point when we want to start turning off the old interface, where if you have any old engagements, campaigns, and A/B tests running, we'll help you migrate them up to the new interface. So don't worry about anything stopping working or disappearing. We'll make sure that doesn't happen. So the first thing I'll do, if you're new to Engage, I'll spend a quick 5 minutes just taking you through the concept, what it does and how it works, and then I'll actually dive in and create some A/B tests and campaigns. So the logic behind Engage, you'll have used the other tools in the platform with your game to find out how your game is getting on, identify things that are maybe happening in the game, and then identify player segments that you want to treat in some special kind of way. And that might be that you want to make the game easier for them, change the difficulty of a particular mission. You might want to gift them a power-up or present some content to them, or just very quietly behind the scenes change the way the game is behaving. So you can do all these sorts of things with Engage. There are two major pieces to the Engage equation. There's the in-game personalization, which happens literally live as the player is playing, and there's the out-of-game personalization, which is your push notifications, which typically are designed to try and pull the player back into the game after they've left. For the purposes of the webinar this afternoon, I'll mainly be showing you the in-game personalization, because that's really where the kind of new things in the Engage interface are targeted. So let's kind of take a little look and see what we've got behind the scenes. If I go into the Engage section on my game, we'll see that we have only two menu options on the new Engage. We have actions and campaigns. The old Engage had many more, out of 6 different options on it. So we've simplified the interface down a great deal with the new UI. So the things you can do with Engage, basically you have to decide at what points in the game do you want to potentially personalize the behavior. And typically there will only be a finite number of places in the game where this is appropriate. So that we'll use what's called decision points in the game, and we'll instrument them. And at these decision points, we will fire a request up to Delta DNA to see if there's any campaigns running that the player is eligible for. So those decision points, typically in this demo game, we've used one at when the game is launched. We've got one when the player runs out of credits, and we've got one when they fail a mission. And those are reasonably kind of typical types of decision points. There are points in time in your game where you want to have a little think and say, okay, do we want to do anything special for this player? And you can then start putting campaigns behind those decision points and put some logic on them. The other thing we have to consider is, once we've decided when we're going to kind of be making personalization choices in the game, the other thing to consider is, well, what are the things we potentially want to do in the game? And you pretty much you need to kind of have a think about those up front before you try and instrument the game. And these will be very game specific things. So in our example, you're going to see me changing the difficulty of a level or trying to steer the player to a particular page in my web store. And it will pretty much be determined with what you want to do with the player in the game and how you instrument that. So without further ado, I'll actually dive in. And you can see from the screen here that I'm already on the actions page, and there are three major types of action I can perform with Engage. The three actions at the moment are I can simply send some game parameters back down to the game and use these to change the game behavior. I can send a simple message to the player in game. So it might be a little pop-up message that says, why don't you use the golden sword to defeat the difficult orc? Or we might actually want to present an image pop up to the player and put some buttons on it and let the player make choices over what buttons they press and then therefore the outcomes of whatever those buttons are. And by putting an interface like this in front of the game, it means you can actually control some game personalization without having to re-instrument the game and resubmit it through the App Store. So let's take a look at the simplest example of this in action. We'll run an A/B test and we'll change the game a little bit and send some game parameters back down to it. So the first thing we need to do before we even set up the campaign, we need to set up the actions. And in this case, we've already got some actions set up. So the actions in this case is we've got two different actions. One action is going to present a parameter called blue pill to the player. And if I just drill into that, we'll see we've got the action is called blue pill. The parameter we're going to send down to the game is called pill type, and the value in it is blue. And if I go back again to the previous page, you'll see we've got a very similar one set up for the red pill type red. The way I did this, let me just rewind and I'll actually take you right back to the very start and I'll show you how we build something like that. The first thing we need to have is the parameter we're going to send back to the game, and typically this will already have been set up when you created your events for the game. You'll have decided what parameters are going to be used. If we didn't already have that, let's just have a look at the parameters in this game and let's just set something up just to show you. So there's a lot of parameters in this game, so let's give it a second. Let's see what we've got. If we get anything around about the power-ups. We don't. Good, right. So we've got something there called power-up name. Let's just create another one just called the generic one called power-up. Add parameter. So we're creating a whole new parameter that we might want to pass down to the game. We're going to call it power-up. Type of power-up. I can use this is a string parameter, and we could just have it being a free-form string with any value, but I might know in advance what the possible power-ups are. So I might say my power-ups are, let's be a bit more adventurous about power-up. XP boost, and we might have health boost. So there's two parameters set up, or one parameter with two potential values. Let's add that in. And if I come back now to my actions page, let's use that to set up some game parameters that we're going to send back down to the game. So I'm going to create a new game parameter to send to the game. We'll call it XP boost. And we'll pick up that new parameter we just created. So we've got a drop down list. There we go, there's my power up I've just created. And select what value we want in it. The only values it can possibly have are those two enumerated ones because we chose to fill that in. So let's select that and save it. and let's create another new action. Game parameters, create. Choose power up again, but this time put the health boost in, and we'll give it name. Save that. So if I come back to my actions page, in my actions list I've now got these two parameters that I can send to the game. So let's go and set up an A/B test and see what happens to new players if we give them one of those two different things. So to set up my A/B test, I'm going to go into the campaigns section and create a new campaign. And let's give this player start boost. Give new free power up. We already have some decision points instrumented for this game. In fact, we've got rather a lot of them, just because it's a demo game. So I've just chosen one. To create a decision point, it's not all that dissimilar to the way I just created that parameter. There's a page in setup for managing your decision points. So let's come back into here. So I've given myself a name and a description for my campaign, chosen a decision point. I could also choose to add some additional criteria to the decision point. So rather than this firing on every decision point, I could be looking for the game to be passing additional parameter data to the system at that point when the decision point's hit. We'll leave that blank at the moment though. The next thing it's asking me to do is to choose who this A/B test is for, and this is where I would use my player segmentation if I wanted to target specific players, and typically that's exactly what you would do. You very seldom actually would run an A/B test or campaign on your entire audience, but for the purposes of this we will just use the entire audience. But you can see there's all my player segments are in this list, and as I create new player segments they'll appear on here too. I've got a button for restricting this to new players, which will make sure that only players who have a start date time after the start time I set up on this will be included. And we can set the A/B test to run immediately, as it is by default, or we can say, no, let's wait and start this up on Friday afternoon or whatever. But we'll just choose to set this off immediately, give it an end date, I'll let it run forever. And this is the point where we actually start defining what the campaign's going to do. Normally, we could just say, let's put an action in, and the action is going to be, we're going to use game parameter action, and it's now showing me the game parameter actions I've got set up. So there's my XP booster one, and I can say I can go on and do other stuff, but what I'm going to do is, rather than just run this as a campaign, we want to run this as an A/B test. So the minute I hit the A/B test button, you're going to see the campaign settings panel change, and now it's giving me my B group. This is where we started, so we'll now actually give these people a name. XP boost group, and I can now start adding other variants. It's given me a control group as well, so the control groups won't get presented any actions. The group B is my first group I set up. Let's add another variant group called group C, and we're going to give these guys a different action. So with these guys we'll give them the health boost. So we've got XP boost and health boost. I'll call this health boost group. And we can add other actions. That's just one action we're doing. What we could do is we could add follow-on actions and start creating chains of quite complex behaviors. But at this stage, let's just keep it to one simple action. We'll put a conversion event in here, and we'll just use this one here, pill taken, and that will mark the player as having converted if they fire that event. We can add further criteria to that. We can add additional parameters, but I'm not going to do so in this case. And let's just save that. And the next page is going to ask me, it's going to give me a summary of what we've set up and ask me to confirm if that's all right before we start it off. So let's just confirm we've got our player start boost that's running on the first run decision point. It's targeting all users and it's going to start immediately, run indefinitely, and the players will convert when they hit the pill taking event. And our two variant groups are going to get an XP boost or a health boost parameter. So we're good with that. Let's start that off. And that's our campaign now enabled, and it will start running the next time the system recaches. So within the next couple of minutes it will start actually running. When a campaign is up and running, there's other panels down here. They're empty at the moment, but it'll start coming up with a summary of the players who have been in it. So let's take a look at one that's already been running for a little while. Let's just open that one up. You can see this test is set off a little earlier, and it's got 19 users have picked up a similar sort of test. This has got a red pill and a blue pill as the output, and 19 users have picked up the red pill, 15 users have picked up the blue pill, and there's a little summary down there as well. And what you can also do, now that this is up and running and firing, you can go back into Measure and start digging into that data in more detail, and you can use Analyze, Slice and Dice, all those Analyze tools to actually dig around and see, actually dig into the events that are firing as a result of this. The other things that are going on in this campaign screen, just while we're here, this is showing me the campaigns on a timeline, and I could slide the timeline around and go back to today. I can also look at a calendar view, so I can see what tests I've got running, what campaigns, whether they're overlapping with each other, etc. The other things I can do in here, I can change the priority of my tests and campaigns. So if I have a player that qualifies for multiple ones, I can just drag them around and change the priority as to which campaign they will get presented with first. I can pause campaigns. If I've created a campaign and I like it and I want to create another one that's quite similar, I can use the clone button. So let's just clone this one here. And that's got it now in an open state, unsaved. I can come in and make modifications to this, then save it as a new version. So this one would be called Player Start Boost Copy. So I can use that to clone and make similar new tests. And that's the kind of the main aspects to the campaign manager side. I'll go back again, I'll rewind and show you the different action types, because the parameter one is the simplest of the different action types. I'll let you see the other two action types, and then we'll do a little bit more complex stuff in the campaign manager. So if I jump back again across the actions page, you see that was the game parameter actions we used. You'll see from the list down here we've got different icons showing the different types. So the next type is a simple message, and really the simple message, all it is a text header and a text body that you would fill in. And you can also pass parameter data down along with the message. So that's where you then come in here and pick your parameter and pick a value for it in the same way that we did in the previous example. Let's save that and give it a name. The third type of action is the most interesting and the most complex. It's the image message. So this is where we build actions that we're going to pop an image up in front of the user, put buttons on it, potentially pass parameters around as well. So I've just hit the create image message button. We'll give this a name. So let's just say webinar example pop-up. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to select a background image. There's probably already some images loaded. Yeah, we can see there's already some images loaded on this account, but let's upload a new image, and let's choose this one here. There we go, and we'll choose that and use it. So that's me now got an image selected for the background of this image pop-up. We can see from my preview screen here that the scaling is horribly wrong, but this lets me check what it would look like on different device types. So on an iPhone 6 landscape it looks okay, and that's simply because it's quite a high resolution image. But let's go down here and play around with it a bit. So let's center our image. Rather than it covering the entire area, let's contain it within the screen area, and let's put some margin on it. Let's actually push it in by 20% at each side. That's looking a bit better. The background, we want to dim the background down in the game so we can actually draw the eye to this a bit better, and let's dismiss the pop-up if you click on the background outside it. What else do we want to do? Let's add a couple of buttons to it. I've got buttons here that are in the background picture, but to make those clickable, I've burnt them into the picture really just so I can align things neatly. What we really need to do is actually put those buttons really properly on there. So I've added the button, and I'm going to select an image. So let's put the cancel button in first, and we can slide that into position. Let's add another button, put a dismiss action on the cancel button, add another button in, and we'll select our accept button. And on this one we'll put an action in of Mohawk power up. The other thing I could have done, rather than putting an action and a value on that, I could also have chosen a URL and put a URL in there and actually used this to direct the user to a specific page, potentially in the App Store. So that's me got my action set up, and we could pass additional parameters down with it, but in this case we'll not bother, we'll just go with it as it is. And obviously I've done something wrong, so let's come back up here and see what I've done wrong. The background image, right, if we click on the background, I want it to dismiss the pop-up. Let's see if I've got everything this time. Action successfully saved. So if I now come back to the actions page, there's our example pop-up. In the campaigns page, if we want to use that, we can create a campaign. This time we'll do webinar pop-up campaign, and let's give it a random description. Decision point, we'll choose a different decision point. Let's say the player's just run out of credits, and we're going to target this to our whales. So this is us getting a bit more sophisticated with our targeting this time. We're actually using a selection group. Again, we'll start this immediately and we'll run it indefinitely, but this time we're not going to run an A/B test. We're just going to put a single action on this, and the action is going to be an image-based action, and there's our webinar example pop-up that we've just created. And the conversion event, well, let's imagine that action I just set up was going to send them into the store and present them with a special item specifically designed for whales that's quite expensive and very, very exclusive. So what we then might want to put in on our on the conversion event is let's look for a transaction and look for the fact that our whale has just purchased a specific product type. So let's say they've just purchased item name and set the item name to exclusive whale item, whatever. So that's how you set up a more sophisticated pop-up based campaign. And once again, it'll give me a summary of what I've set up, and I can then start it off. There was a warning there, there's unsaved changes, so I've done something and not saved it, so let's just make sure I save that. And before we turn it on, let's just look at a couple of the other options that I've kind of glossed over on this page. We can set campaigns to run forever. We can also set them to repeat. So when a campaign repeats, when the player, every time the player hits a decision point and they meet the criteria, then potentially they could get presented with this same campaign again and again and again. And depending what you're trying to do, that might be perfectly acceptable, but then there might be other occasions where you say, no, actually, I want to, don't keep showing them the same thing again and again and again. Wait for a few hours between repeats. So I would say, yes, this should repeat, and I can put a delay in there in days, hours, or minutes as to how long you need to wait before you're allowed to repeat it. And let's just give that a 30-minute cooldown, essentially. The other thing I can do, rather than it just having one action in it and repeating the same action again and again and again, I can put sequences of actions in. So the first time through, we've given them this webinar example pop-up. The next time they hit it, let's give them a slightly different one. So let's say the action in there, we'll do another image message one, because I think there was one there. Let's send them to deltadna.com, and we'll put a delay in here of 15 minutes. So what's going to happen in this case now, we're going to hit the first action, then let's say they're firing decision points every 1 minute. They're going to have a cool-off period until the 15th minute, then the next time they'll get this pop-up image link, and then they'll get nothing until 30 minutes have elapsed, and they come right back to the beginning of the campaign sequence again. And what you'll see with every time I'm adding an action, it's giving me the option to add a further one at the end. So if I say yes to action 3, action 4 has just popped up. So I can keep adding actions indefinitely and use that to build quite sophisticated campaigns. What I can also do, because when a player reacts to one of these campaigns, it will trigger events that then come back into the system and close the loop and allow me to essentially go back into analyze tools. I can then start building segments out of the events. So if I wanted to pick up the event from the VIP user purchasing that exclusive item and then use that as a segment to then drive a further campaign. So you can start stacking campaigns and kind of building sequences of campaign logic in this as well. So reasonably powerful piece of kit. And the new interface, if you did use the old interface, you'll recognize a lot of the pieces, a lot of the things you're trying to do are the same, but it's now a lot easier. And one of the big things we essentially did in the change from the old interface to the new one is we separated the actions and campaigns. The way the old system used to work, you would have to set up the actions within each campaign, and you would find yourself repeating that kind of actions process quite a lot. So a lot more efficient. The final thing I'll show you just before, I'm kind of aware there's been a lot of talking and kind of showing you the interface. There's already other webinars showing the behind the scenes, how to actually instrument and code the A/B tests and Engage. But I'll give you just a quick 2-minute kind of view of some of that in action. But I'm not going to spend a further half hour going into that. I'll save that for another day. So what I've got in front of me here, I've got a little demo game inside Unity, and this is going to actually fire an A/B test. In fact, it's actually already fired 2 A/B tests in the background so quickly we didn't even notice. It's going to fire 2 A/B tests when it starts up, and there's some buttons once we get into the game that if I press them, it will stimulate some other campaign displays. So what's actually happened behind the scenes, the minute we launched this, it's registered as a new player, and it's decided how many coins, how many credits the player should get as their default starting pack. And we've used an engagement, an A/B test to determine that for us. So that's what it actually looks like in the game code. Let me slide this in if it's of any interest to anybody. But if we go into the game controller, what you'll see in this game, I'm forcing this to run a new user ID every time, simply so I can cycle through the control group and A group and B group and A/B tests. So it's pretending it's a new user every time I run the game. You would have to be very careful you commented that out or took it out in a live game. But right after my launch code, so there's my launch code that's actually starting up the SDK, Delta DNA instance start SDK. And the very first things we're doing are, there's that first A/B test getting requested. So there's our decision point of choose pill, and that'll come back and say whether we're getting the red pill or the blue pill. And there's the code that's firing, saying if this is a new player and he's not got any credits, let's run an A/B test called initial credits and find out what happens. And in this case, it's come back and said, well, your initial credits are 5, and on the red pill, blue pill A/B test, it's come back empty. So our player, the reason it's done that, our player will have fallen into control group in this example. That's what you'll see in the outputs when it comes back empty. If we start playing the game, let's put some buttons in front of me here, and these are going to simulate, or not simulate, they're actually going to fire 2 image-based pop-ups. So there's a pop-up the same as one of the ones we created. The cancel button will dismiss the pop-up, and if I just clear the console here so we can actually see what's going on, if I do that again, and we'll see the response that's come back from the system, from Engage, is all the stuff telling us all about that image and the scale and the position of all the bits. Luckily, because we're using our Unity SDK, it knows how to display all that all itself. We don't need to actually do anything, it'll do it for us. But if you're using a REST API, you would use the information contained in this to draw and display your pop-up. And when we hit the accept button, there's, in this case, in this one we actually did send a parameter back down. So there's the action that came back down, and it had the parameter power up associated with it. The other one I've got set up here shows what the URL action looks like. So here's a slightly different one. There's my pop-up, and this time if I hit the action button, it's going to try and spawn a browser window and take me to the URL we specified in the action. So that's what you would use to direct people into a specific page in the App Store if you wanted. So that's pretty much how the new system works. Lots of new user interface stuff, but under the hood, the instrumentation is pretty much the same. The documentation for this, if you go onto the documentation site and go to the analytics page and scroll down to Engage, you'll see we have an overview page and then a set of pages specifically about the actions and specifically about the campaigns. And if you click into them, it will show you each of the action types and take you through how to set them up. And there's a familiar pop-up that we've seen in the demo. So that's how you set them all up. If you get stuck or need any help, hit the support button on the documentation site or up in the top right of the main site, and we'll help you with it. If you have got existing old style A/B tests and targeted campaigns running, what we would advise is as you create new ones, do them in the new system. You'll see in this particular game, I've got both the new Engage interface and the old style one, which is this A/B testing and targeting panels. I've got both interfaces available to me. We would encourage you, if you're setting up new stuff, always do it in the new interface. And if you have got old stuff running here, if it's naturally going to expire and the campaign has an end date on it, then that's fine. But if you want to migrate it across, or come such times when we eventually decide to turn off the old system, we'll help you migrate anything over to the new system. So that's it. Any questions out there? Let's have a look at
Yep,
this.
we have had one that's come in asking if you can explain the action part that would be triggered when the user clicks on accept, and how would that be processed by the game or the platform?
Right, okay. So that comes back down to, I kind of mentioned that the instrumentation, and you do, before you get into all this stuff, you do need to have a sit down and a think as to what you want the decision points to be and what the actions are, and that will kind of inform you as to what you should be trying to pass back down to the game. The way you handle it in the game, so let me look at one of these as we actually set up. So let's look at this down the rabbit. No, the fact that let's look at this down the rabbit hole one. So what actually happens in that one? It's going to pass either a parameter called pill type, containing the value either red pill or blue pill. And what we've got in the game to trigger that is here's the request engagement, and we're saying our decision point is choose pill. And if we took all that out, there and simply fired that code, it's going to send a request called choose pill and not do anything when it gets a response. So this lump of code in the middle, what this was actually doing was this was handling the response back, and the code, basically what it was doing was saying, if you see a parameter come back called pill type, then do something. And you would have your own code set up and instrumented so that it knows what to do with a red pill or a blue pill. So that's kind of why you do need to have a think about this beforehand as to what are the potential actions I want to be firing, and what parameters do I have to send back in them. And typically there will be, again, it will generally be a finite small number of possible decision points and possible actions that are applicable to your game. The URL based one, where we put an action into a URL, that's all pretty much handled automatically if you're using one of our SDKs. So let me find, here's the code for that, and basically we fired our request to engage, and we've built a pop-up. We've got a special pop-up class that you can use. So we built a pop-up called URL pop-up, and most of what's going on here is me actually just debugging it, so as you can see in the demo game, so it spits out some text so you can actually see what it's doing. But ultimately, really all we've done is we've created a pop-up and we've shown it, and the pop-up itself has known, because this was a URL pop-up, to follow the URL that came through on it. So it's pretty straightforward. The key thing really is just to sit down and have a bit of a planning phase before you try and implement these things, so you make sure you define what your decision points are and what the actions you want to take are, and then you can communicate that to the dev guys and start setting it up in the interface here. But again, if you want us to take a look at your game or advise you, or you need some help on it, just hit the help and support buttons, and Louise and I can either answer you there and then, or we can set up a conference call and take you through the kind of any specific integration stuff that you need help with.
Great. Was there any other questions from anybody else? doesn't look like it just now. But yeah, as Laurie mentioned, if you want to get in touch with us, if anything comes to mind following the webinar, you know how to get in contact with us, and we'll come back to you. Was there anything else, Laurie, or do you think that's covered the main points today?
No, that's us, I think, I hope. This, if you want to watch it again, this will be posted on the documentation site, probably in the release, on the latest releases page. And we'll do some follow-ups. There's webinars on the site already showing the old A/B testing and old targeting interfaces, and it shows them in a lot more detail than this one. Actually, go into a lot more detail in the code and implementing it in code. Those will be replaced within the next couple of weeks with redone ones using the new interface.
Great. Thanks, Laurie.
Thanks. Bye.